Translation. Whatever we can understand by nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created from any source other than your Lordship, thou so great. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The manifested world is full of varieties of created beings in 8,400,000 species of life, and some of them are superior and inferior to others. In human society, the human being is considered to be the superior living being, and among the human beings there is also different varieties, good, bad, equal, etc. But Narada Muni took for granted that none of them has any source of generation besides his father Brahmaji. Therefore, he wanted to know all about them from Brahma. Okay. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Naham Veda Parang Yasmin Na Parang Na Samavibo Nama Rupa Gunair Bhavyam Sat Asat Kinchit Anyataha. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal, or temporary, is not created from any source other than your Lordship, thou so great. So, Narada Muni is posing all kinds of questions to Lord Brahma. I think of it kind of like if you're listening to NPR or something, and there's the host and there's a reporter. It's not that they're just making up questions and answers. They already know what they are ahead of time. They're just probably reading from a script, basically speaking. But the point is that it's for the benefit of the audience, even though both the speaker and the host, they know the answers to everything. They're putting it in such a way so it's of interest to the public. So in a similar way, Narada Muni, I think it's fair to say, being a self-realized soul, and Lord Brahma being the origin of everything in the universe, they know the answers to all the questions that Narada is placing. Just one moment, please. Okay. Narada is asking, what is the purpose of this creation? Who created it? Is it just you? Because it appears like you are the source of everything. I mean, we're talking about, let's go to the next slide. We're talking about everything within the universe here. It can be encompassed within these parameters. We've got Nama, Rupa, Gunai. Nama means name, so that's like the subtle energy, because even though it's sound, that's one of the gross elements, but sound originates in thought, For old people like us, sometimes my wife catches me talking to myself, just kind of babbling. And I go, oh my God, that's embarrassing. Just like thinking of something, you got thoughts in your brain and it comes out of your mouth, because your mind is actually thinking it's sound. So the subtle manifestation is actually sound or thought. And then it comes to the gross manifestation, which are rupa. So it's not just form, but it means, it could be fire, air, earth, water, even things that aren't, manifest with a form. It just means some sort of a manifestation, something that's perceptible to one of our senses. So first of all, we have the name, and then we have the form, and any of those forms, they have different gradations or different qualities, gunas. And those can be either para or apara or sama. Para means superior, and apara means inferior. And then sama means equal to. Actually, there is nothing in the universe that is equal. Everything is unique. But when it's quite a bit better or quite a bit worse than where we are, we can call it para or apara. And then if you're pretty close to the same, it can be called sama. Just like there is not a snowflake, there's not a drop of water, there's not a grain of sand in the universe that is exactly identical to another. If you take a snowflake and you look at it under a microscope, every single one of them is unique in themselves. Never before, never after will there be a snowflake that is the same. So nothing is equal, but it is close enough. You can call it either sama or para and apara. And then within all of that are all the universal manifestations. Plus, it says sat and asat. The purport to this verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he views asat and sat referring to the subtle and gross elements in the universe. Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that this can more easily be understood as in relationship to relative time, that which is eternal and that which is temporary. Now, Lord Muni is saying that everything is coming from you, whether it's sat or asat. So, of course, we know that everything is limited within the material world. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is a very nice little chart that shows universal time. I thought it was excellent. So just to illustrate what's being said here, why some things can be better created can also be assumed to be sat. Here we have a graphic representation of universal time. This is like really good. It gives you visually a feeling for how much time is within the universe. Here we are in the Kali Yuga, 5,000 years have passed. And actually, it's 432,000 years altogether. Very vast portion of time. Paleontologists will say that human beings have appeared on the Earth within the last 150 to 200,000 years. Well, Kali Yuga, it lasts 432,000 years. And then if you multiply that by 2, that's the duration of the next Yuga, or the previous Yuga, Dwarka Yuga, 864,000 years. You add another 432,000 years on top of that. That's the duration of Treta Yuga, about 1.3 million. And then Satya Yuga is like if you multiply the duration of Kali Yuga by 4, and it comes out to be 1.7. So 1.7 plus 1.3 million plus 800,000 plus 400,000 comes out to be 4.32 million years. That's the cycle of 4 yugas, which is a Maha Yuga or a Divya Yuga. So a vast sum of time. And in between those, there's junctions. Those are called sandhyas. So if you just follow this graph up here, that's actually a very small portion of time when you consider what the lifetime of a Manvantara is. There's the lifetime of a Manvantara is 71 Divya Yugas, which is kind of corresponding, if you think about it, if you have good health in this planet, you're going to live about 70 years or so. So it's kind of like one Divya Yuga for us is just like 1 year for a Manvantara, because he lives 71 Divya Yugas, which equals 306 million of our solar years. And if you look at the chart here, you see that there's a partial devastation at the end of a Manvantara, and at the beginning of another Manvantara, and that Sandhya, there's a partial creation. So, now please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it's only the middle and the lower planetary systems that are affected by this partial devastation, the change of every Manu. So please correct me if I'm wrong there. But if you go to the next level of time, there is a kalpa, which is the day of Lord Brahma. In a day of Lord Brahma, there are 14 such Manvantaras. A day of Brahma is 432 billion years, and such is his night as well. And he also, at the end of his day, there is a partial devastation. At the beginning of his day, there is a partial creation of the universe. And again, as far as I know, now this includes even all the heavenly planets, the Swargaloka. Everything underneath that, it's all devastated when Brahma goes to sleep. So we just read in Bhagavatam, I believe it was chapter 2 or chapter 3, about yogis that follow the Shushumara. They go to heavenly, the upper planetary systems, and you can go to the Maharloka, and there you can live for an entire day of Lord Brahma for 4.32 billion years. And then when yogis see the devastation of the universe coming about, then they can go to the highest realm, which is Brahmaloka. So if you follow this up here, in order to avoid this universal partial devastation, they go to Satyaloka, and there they can live for 15.5, I think. I think that was the figure. Trillion years. By the way, the modern cosmologists say that the universe is 13 something. I think it's 13.8 trillion years. So that's a small fraction compared to what the life of Lord Brahma is, how they calculate it, which is based on who knows what. But anyway, so if you can make it to Brahma's planet, to Satyaloka, you can have a duration of up to 15.5 trillion years, and then Lord Brahma's lifetime is 311 trillion years, or 36 kalpas. I'm sorry, 36,000, of his days, 36,000 kalpas. So the point of all this is twofold. One is to show about how when it says sat and asat, that's why you can consider that some things in the universe are such a vast duration of time that they can be considered eternal, at least from our standpoint. That's why even the demigods, they're sometimes called eternals because their duration of life is so long. So Narada Muni, in a colloquial sense, he is referring to there being Sat and Asat beings that appear to be eternal, their planets appear to be eternal because the duration of time is so long. So that's one aspect of this, and the other reason I brought this up is because we will be talking something about the vast duration of time within the universe and how it's viewed. So let's go to the next slide. So I entitled this verse, like the essence of this verse could be, that what is the purpose of creation? Because Narada is asking all these questions of his father, Lord Brahma, his source, that you appear to be the source of everything. You know, is there another source beyond you? And why are we here? What is the purpose of the creation? So, and Narada is asking Lord Brahma, because he is the authority. He's the one who created it. So who would be a better person to ask than him as far as what is its purpose and is there somebody greater than you? So, next slide. So we are to ask, what is the purpose of creation? Here, just one second, please. So if we were to ask, what is the purpose of creation, which the human being should ask, then only with the faculties of our mind, intelligence, and our sense perception, the inductive process, we would only come ultimately to two conclusions. One is the atheistic, materialistic assumption about the world, or the other is that of the Sunyavadis and the Nirvisheshas, the voidists. Those are the two ultimate conclusions you can come up with on our own by trying to ponder upon these questions. The atheists, they see this world as having no purpose whatsoever. This, in Bhagavad Gita, is described as aparasparam. So we just went over that word para and apara. So aparasparam means that there's no higher cause, there's no higher reason. It's pointless. The whole thing just has come about by chance only. And because of that, there is no one in charge. Anishvaram, there is no controller, there's no ultimate purpose or creator to this universe. It just happened by chance, and therefore, kama haitukam. Kama haitukam means the only reason you have to exist is just to enjoy yourself. There's no controller, there's no owner, there's no purpose, so therefore just enjoy it. You know, it's just like if we were walking on the street and suddenly a $100 bill starts floating down, and we look all around, we don't see anybody. Heck, hey, there's no owner to this. You know, you just put it in your pocket and enjoy it. Or if there is an owner, you don't see him, so Just pocket it and enjoy it. That's a materialistic conclusion. The problem with this is that the world is full of suffering. Krishna says, dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It's temporary and full of suffering. So those that are in a higher level, even the Mayavadis, or certainly, like the Buddhists, the Buddhists, they recognize that this world is full of suffering and it's temporary. That is an inescapable problem. So therefore, rather than trying to enjoy this world, they have come to the conclusion that this world is mithya, it's illusion. The whole thing is a superimposition on us. And what are we? We are ultimately Brahman. We're spirit. We're all part of one homogeneous energy field. And the only reason that we are suffering in this world is because we've misidentified ourselves through superimposition, thinking that we're part of this world when actually it doesn't even exist. It's just an illusion, and if we want to stop our suffering, we have to stop the illusion. In other words, we have to destroy ourselves. So in order to stop suffering, we have to destroy ourselves. Those are the two conclusions we can come to. Either there's no controller, no owner, no purpose, everything is by accident, it's here to enjoy for us. Or we recognize it's full of suffering, and then we have to, if we annihilate ourselves, then we'll get rid of suffering. So let's look at these two philosophies. Here we have someone flipping a coin. So this is a materialistic concept that matter is eternal. It's always been here. There's no origin. And everything has arisen by chance. Now that's a reasonable scientific way to look at things. Just like if you have a coin, if you flip it, whether you call heads or whether you call tails, sooner or later, inevitably, you are going to be right, no matter what you call. Because the odds are that if you have enough time, you are always inevitably going to come up with being right. So similarly, if the universe has come about from eternal matter, the eternal stuff that makes up the universe, if there's an explosion, like a big bang, and everything is set into motion, then by the interaction of those elements, anything could happen given enough time. That's the whole premise. So we don't want to be dogmatic, religious fanatics and just believe that there's a God out there because we can't see him with our present senses. We have to prove to ourselves and everyone else that God exists. We have to show that he exists because we don't want to be religious fanatics. We want to be scientific and only believe what's in front of our eyes. That's called pratyaksha. So the materialistic view is that God does not exist. So let's try and analyze, is there validity in that way of thinking? So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so in the 20th century, I would say arguably the most important advance, thing that brought us into the information age was the introduction of powerful computing or calculating machines, computers. The advancement in computer science has created exponential growth as far as our knowledge, our industry, all of the things that we can enjoy in this world have become enhanced at an exponential rate because of computers. So much so that it's conceivable that through the development of the science of artificial intelligence, very soon, one day, we will be able to program a robot to become self-conscious. Because if you can mimic all of the emotions, the memories, the sensory inputs of a living being and program that all into a robot, then, and you can't tell the difference between the robot showing emotion, it mimicking emotion, memory, etc., speech, with that of a living being, then that is consciousness. That's what they say. You can't tell the difference, so therefore that being, that robot, would be conscious. That's the point. That's a theory. So here we have a picture of some computers, and then the picture, it also shows 1 byte of information. So just very quickly to go through this, how this thing works is, back in World War II, there was a powerful calculating machines that were developed to break codes, Enigma codes. Anyway, and they were based on a very simple concept, actually, and that was that if you have an electrical impulse and you interrupt it in a circuit, then you can represent the on and the off switch with either a 1 on or a 0 off. And then by those electrical impulses, you could translate that to represent either 1s or 0s. So each 1 or 0 is called a bit. And if you take 8 of those bits and you put them into a sequence, then that's called 1 byte. So the interesting thing is that when you put those 8 bits of information together into a byte and you combine them in different strings of 1s and 0s, you can get up to 256 different characters, numbers, or symbols. So that's amazing, with just 8 bits of information. But the most amazing thing is when you take 1 byte and you combine it with another byte, you don't just get like 500 different varieties. It's just not like adding it together, but it becomes exponential. It's 256 cubed, which is 65,000 different varieties of combinations you can get. And then if you cube that, I'm sorry, that was squared, and you cube it to the power of 3 exponentially, it goes into the thousands, millions, or trillions, and just with a few numbers, or a few bytes of information. So you can just imagine, by translating this hardware into a software language, you can do all kinds of amazing, predictable calculations very easily. So the whole premise, let's go back to the previous slide about the coin. The whole point is the universe, according to the materialists, has come about by chance, by accident. There's no ultimate intelligence behind it. It just came about by an explosion, by chance reactions, given enough time. Anything can happen. Just like, no matter if you call heads, no matter if you call tails, eventually, inevitably, you're going to be right. So similarly, if you have this kind of computation power, you can come up with anything, and especially with the advances that we've seen over the last few decades with artificial intelligence, one day, very soon, we're going to be able to create robots that are going to be just like living beings. So let's see if that assumption is tenable. So here's the next slide. So in order to analyze if that's feasible enough, because we don't want to be like religious fanatics, we want to really see, does this work or not? Let's use the scientific method. Okay, so with computer science, everybody can please follow me. I hope I'm not boring you here. But you have your hardware, basically electrical impulses in a CPU, and that transfers to a series of 1s and 0s, which represents numbers, letters, or symbols. And that's transferred to something, to the language of the computer, and that goes to an assembly language, a higher language, to computer language, and then you go to the operating systems, and you go on from there. Whoops, what did I do wrong? Oops. Okay, next slide. So just to briefly go through how this works. I'm going through this in detail just so that we can try and understand, is it feasible or not to assume that this could arise by chance? That's the whole premise. that everything arises by chance interaction. So you have your hardware. The hardware has to turn into a code. So on the lowest level is a binary code, just a series of ones and zeros in different sequences. That is translated to the architecture of the machine, which is like the core instructions, the code which is used for the next level, which is called an assembly language, which is a low-level language that makes those instructions from the machine that like bridge the machine to the computer language accessible. And from that state, there's a interpreter or a compiler, which is a high-level language which is used to execute the codes of the machine so that they can actually start to do something. And then once you've got it at that level, at a high level of machine language, then it can be turned into thousands of different types of programming languages. There's Fortran, Cobol, BASIC, so many different programming languages that you can then use to develop an operating system. And with the operating system, you can ultimately, at this point, at this level, you can start making your own, if you know what you're doing, you can make your own programs or applications that you can use in everyday life. So, the reason why I went through this is just to show what's behind the level where we can understand, at least I can understand, because I develop websites. So the level I'm at is where I use an operating system to develop an application. Even I'm a little bit farther on beyond, lesser rung than that, but anyway. So let's assume that by flipping the coin, by chance interaction, by taking random numbers and just throwing them, that you could develop, that it would spontaneously, given enough time, you would get a binary code in an exact sequence, and that would, by evolution, develop into an architectural code for the machine that would bridge to the assembly language, that would bridge to the interpreter, to a high-level language that would bridge to a programming language that would self-manifest an operating system all by chance, given enough time. Let's assume that that is possible. Given enough time, anything can happen after all. So, by the scientific method, at this level that now we can at least understand, can we develop spontaneously, by throwing numbers out, a computer program? So here we have, at the top, this is one line of code. I actually took this last night. This is the code from our website, usanga.org. It's from one page, our home page actually. It's just one code. It was the smallest page that of code instructions that we have. It's only about 5 lines of code. So I took the first line of code, and just as an example, let's consider, can we rationally assume that it's possible that, given enough time, you can come up with this code of text? Now, anybody that does some coding knows that if you're off even one character, you can crash the code. Your whole site will go down. That's why, unless you know what you're doing, you should not change any of the basic code. You know, that's why you have CMS systems, so that you can go and change the way the site looks or whatever, but you're not going to change the original code. So this is the original code, and if you're off even one character, you can take down your whole system. So it has to be exact. So, given enough time, is it possible, is it reasonable to assume that we could come up to this string of information spontaneously? Well, let's look. There are a lot of possibilities after all. So here we have a representation of 1 byte. That's 256 characters, numbers, or symbols, 256 bits of information. So if you flipped a coin 256 times, probably you would come up with the particular toss that would be equivalent to the first character, which is a left-handed caret. That's a given. Okay, that might work. So what about the next character, which is the question sign? That's the parameter that says that there's an operating system coming into play. So the second byte would be 256 squared, or to the power of 2, which is 65,000. So you'd have a chance of 1 in 65,000 that you would come up with those two characters next to each other in that sequence. By the time you got to the third byte, you'd be in the billions. By the time you got to the fourth byte, you'd be in the trillions. 1 in a trillion, 18 trillion. By the time you got to the fifth byte, where that, after the PHP, the dash, you would be into the fifth. That would be sextillion, which I believe is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 36 zeros behind 340. 1 chance in 340 sextillion. By the time you got to the sixth byte, it would be called a googol. A googol is a number with an exponent of 100. In other words, some number, 115 in this case, 115 googols is 115 with 100 zeros behind it. 1 chance that you would get this sequence up to the sixth byte. By the time you get to the seventh byte, you're in the realm of googolplex. Googolplex is any number over an exponent of 100. So in other words, you have more. It's like googles upon googles of numbers. I didn't go any farther than this because I can't print it on the page. And not only that, I mean, there's probably a good 100 characters here, at least, to get to the end of this first line of code. And by the time, at this rate, the number of zeros would not only wrap around the Earth, it would probably encompass the solar system. It would be such a long number. You would have 1 chance in that number of ever coming up with this exact string for the first line of code for the simplest line of code I could find for our Sangha. So, but then again, given enough time, if the universe, or rather if matter is eternal, given enough time, you know, the explosion happens and everything gets spins into space. Given enough time, hey, it might happen, you know. That's the hypothesis. All right, let's go to the next slide. So here we have a picture of a bacterial flagellum. Bacteria, the smallest they've found, are so tiny that you can fit over 4 million bacteria, these single-celled animals, on the head of a pin. They're that small, and they're so simple that they're single-celled animals. So we've just gone through this whole thing about computer programming because the hope is that very soon, one day, with our exponential growth in computer science, in the development of artificial fuzzy intelligence, we're going to be able to create robots which will be self-aware, and they will be the next living beings, and we'll be able to program our thoughts, our emotions, our memories, everything into those robots, and we will be able to live eternally. That's the hypothesis. That's what's being proposed in the highest levels of computer science. So, is that reasonable or not? Well, here we have a bacterial flagellum. It's the simplest type of life that we know of that's in front of our eyes, because we're only going to rely on what we know of. We can't just make things up. So I would propose that even the simplest form of life, this tiny portion of light that is just a millionth of a millimeter is more complex than all of the computer calculating capacity of all the world's computers combined. Now, anyone has a scientific mind, physicist, a scientist, he would never accept such a statement. You know, that's just sheer nonsense. Well, okay, so fine, let's look at this. My statement is that this little creature is more complicated than all of our present computing power combined. So let's see if that has any validity, or if the present scientific notion of computer science would more fit reality. So here we have a picture next to the flagellum of a robot, an android. Androids are human-like, meant to look human-like. So, is it possible that an android could one day do all of the things that a bacteria could do? And therefore, if that is possible, then it may be possible that everything happened by chance. I hope people are following me here. Okay, so let's go back to our original concept, and that was that of a byte of information. That it can be expanded upon until it becomes so sophisticated that it can mimic all human emotions, memory, etc. So if we were able to put together something like that, could it be in the same level as this bacteria? Well, first of all, you'd have to create a robot that has Gyanendriya and Karmendriya. Karmendriya means we have to do the same things as the flagellum. We have to interact with the world. So the android would have to have some way of manipulating, you know, have some sort of arms or appenditures or claws or something. All right, so that's conceivable. That can be manufactured. It also has to have some sort of locomotion, wheels or legs, some way to get around. Okay, fine, that can be manufactured. It has to have some sort of communication, a way of elimination like an exhaust system, and it also has to have a reproductive system. So maybe we can get to that a little bit later, but that's conceivable that you could create a robot like that. So that would take care of the Karmendriyas. The Gyanendriyas are on a more subtle level, and that becomes a little bit more difficult. That is how we perceive the world. The little guy, the bacteria, also perceives the world. He can somehow perceive form, sound, touch, taste, and odor. So similarly, the android would have to have some sort of faculties, instruments, Gyanendriya, so he or she could perceive odors, taste, form, sound, etc. Okay, so maybe that's possible, you know, to create such a machine. But it would also have to mimic the more subtle aspects of nature, which are the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. So it would have to have a way to understand and to learn. And not only learn, but because we're talking about the scientific method, so it has to operate within the confines of physical reality, in other words, time and space. It can't have unlimited learning capacity, neither can it have unlimited memory. Our most powerful computer, they all have limits, no matter you're talking about gigabytes or trigabytes or, you know, however far it goes up, they all have limits. So that machine would not only have to understand and to learn, but it would also have to have the ability to forget. And if it's going to forget, it's got to have some sort of intelligence, artificial intelligence that will be able to discriminate what is useful information and what is not useful information. So let's assume that we could create such a machine that was so in advance. And on top of that, it's got to become self-aware. You know, just like the Terminator robot, it's self-aware, and it's got a purpose. It doesn't need anybody to tell them what to do. Once it's programmed, you know, it can discern things for itself, and it has an idea of self. So it's just like Sadhguru wrote that article about you can create a machine that can sense light, and then that's hooked to speakers, and then you can have a program that says every time a light comes on, it says, I see a red light, I see a red light. But that doesn't mean it's conscious, it's a mechanism that's recognizing a red light. So artificial intelligence, though, has to be so intelligent that it'll actually have an ego. It'll have a feeling of self, consciousness. Okay, so let's assume that all of that is possible. Would that be the same as the flagellum, the bacteria? I would say no, because beyond all this, it also has to have all of the symptoms of life. So the first symptom of life is when something is created, when it takes birth. It comes from an essential, tiny amount of ingredients in a seedling form. And from that, it grows. So that has to come about completely by accident. In its most essential, smallest form, it has to come into being by accident. Then, once it comes into being, it has to be able to absorb nutrients from the outside environment. In other words, consume ingredients from the environment and then actually start to grow. And once that's accomplished, then it has to stabilize. In other words, when it becomes mature, it can't just keep on growing. It's got to come to a certain point when it stabilizes. And then this is when the sexual organ comes into play, the reproductive organ. It's got to be able to replicate itself. It's got to take a fraction of itself and replicate itself, but not an exact copy, not just duplicate itself, but it's got to create an essential small portion of itself that's going to grow and do the same thing. And that thing cannot be exactly the same as the first product. It's got to be unique in some way. Never before, never after will there be an exact copy. It's unique in itself. If that's possible, then it has to start to degrade, to gradually disintegrate, and then finally it'll self-destruct and return to its original elements. So that's why I say that it's unreasonable to think that all of this could take place by chance. We just showed, I think reasonably, that even to produce one line of computer code for that to happen by chance is absolutely unreasonable. And if we're talking about with all the computing power of the world, you can't create something that's even close to equal to the smallest, most simple bacteria. How is it possible to think that simply by chance interactions, by flipping the coin enough, even if you have unlimited time, that you're ever going to come up with something that is equal to a living being? That is not within our experience. Don't want to be a religious fanatic, don't want to be a Luddite, but if we're going to use a scientific method, we can only accept that which is before us. So from everything that we can see, that would simply not be reasonable. So because of that, I would say that the materialistic concept that there is no controller, that things have come about by chance, interaction, that there's no one in charge and everything is here just for us to enjoy, that is a fallacious understanding. It's a false conclusion. So what about the other alternative? Let's go to the next slide. Here we have a rope which looks very much like a snake. There's a snake's head superimposed on it. So the other philosophy of that, avoidism or impersonalism, so they recognize the misery of this world, how we cannot enjoy it. It's temporary and full of suffering. So what is this world? What is the purpose of this world, and what is this world? By their use of empiric knowledge, they've come to the conclusion that the entire world is illusion, that it's simply a superimposition. Just like if you go into a dark room and you see a coil of rope, you actually can see it's a snake. You experience the fear and you actually see it's a snake. But when you turn the light on, you see it's not a snake at all, it's actually a rope. So it's a superimposition. It's an illusion. As soon as the light comes on, you see that there was no snake at all. You simply misunderstood what it was. So this world is full of suffering. If we want to get rid of suffering, we have to get rid of the illusion. Therefore, we have to annihilate ourselves. Here's just one more slide I want to show. I'll try and go through this quickly. What's the time? Running out of time. Here we have, if you can see here, we have on the left-hand side, there's a young lady who's got a headset on, and this headset is connected to cameras, a stereoscopic camera, which is being projected on a doll. So what the researcher is doing is simultaneously touching her foot with some sort of a prod and touching the foot of the doll with a prod. So what the person sees through the stereoscopic vision is the doll, and she feels, she feels as if, she feels as if her body has become the doll. And after doing this for 20 minutes or 40 minutes, it depends on the subject, they actually will lose consciousness of their own body, and their consciousness will be projected in that of the doll. So you see over here in B, there's different sized dolls. They have a little Barbie doll, then a little bit bigger doll, then about a human-sized doll, and they have like giant legs. So that's all they see, and when they get touched in certain ways, they project their consciousness into the doll, and you're made to believe, when they interview them, they're made to think that they're very, very small. They become little tiny people the size of a Barbie doll, or they become huge giants. And they also have experiments where they'll show them different sized cubes, and in the consciousness of a Barbie doll, they'll see those cubes as being huge. And in the consciousness of a big giant, they'll see those same cubes, even though they're the same size, they'll see them as very, very small. So it all has to do with your perception. So this is called superimposition. So what the Maya bodies put forward is that the entire world is a superimposition. It's nothing but an illusion that we have put upon ourselves. We are originally Brahman, this all-pervading, impersonal, non-differentiated spirit. That's what we really are. And there is nothing but a void. And if you want to stop your suffering, then you simply come out of the illusion, get rid of the imposition, and merge into nothingness. Well, there is a problem with this, in that if that is true, where did the illusion come from? If we are Brahman, if we're spirit, if we're non-differentiated and actually nothing exists, this is simply a superimposition, then where did the superimposition come from? Where did the illusion come from? Just like we have a picture here about these dolls, you know, they're, through this experiment, they can project their consciousness into that of a doll. They really feel like a doll. But in order to have that feeling, let's go back to the other slide. That was the snake. This is the quintessential example that's always given about the rope and the snake. In order to have this illusion that the rope is a snake, you have to have a previous experience of both the rope and the snake in order to have the superimposition. So if the world doesn't exist, that would mean the rope doesn't exist and the snake doesn't exist. You know, we're just imagining the whole thing. But if that's true, then where did the illusion come from? Why aren't we always merged into nothingness? Why does anything exist at all? Of course, the Maya body, they will say it comes from a previous illusion, from a previous birth. So then where did that come from? And there's just like a infinite regression of illusions. it really doesn't answer the question. This is referred to as, they call this sat asat vachaniya. The illusion, the mithya, can be expressed neither as existing or not existing. So I think that for any reasonable person, that would not make sense. You have to really study Mayavad or Buddhist literature to be able to accept such a conclusion. So we don't think it's reasonable, even using the scientific method, that, let me just look at my notes, make sure I don't get lost here. Yes, here's an example I was going to give. We don't believe that the world has no controller, has no owner, that it has no purpose, and it's just here to enjoy. We don't believe that we believe the world is full of suffering, that's obvious, but we don't believe that the way to get rid of your suffering is to annihilate yourself. You know, it's just like if you are suffering, you go to the hospital, but when you go to the hospital, you don't go there for the doctors to kill you. Okay, I'll end your suffering right now, and they kill you. Neither would you go to the hospital to enjoy yourself. Oh yeah, let's go to the hospital and get some cancer. And you know, you don't go to the hospital because it's a place full of suffering. So the purpose of the hospital is that if you follow the doctor's, you're in a disease condition, you go to the hospital and you follow the direction of the doctors there, then you can live as comfortable as possible. But the goal is not to stay in the hospital, it's to get treatment from your ailment, to get healthy again, to go out to your real life. That's the purpose. So intelligence means that we have to recognize things that they are, as they are. So I think it's reasonable, with the examples that we've given, that it's reasonable to assume that by chance everything comes about. No. That's not possible. You know, not at least within our experience. And that everything is illusion, and in order to solve the problems of life is to destroy yourself and emerge into the void. That also is not very appealing. The scientific method would be to understand that what we actually see is that we don't want to die, that we want to know what is going on, what is actually the purpose of life, why we're here, and that we cannot exist without loving relationships. We are looking for relationships with others because we want pleasure. And that pleasure can't be limited. Okay. Sorry, I'm just doing some things here. Okay, so that pleasure that we're looking for, we don't want temporary pleasure. We don't want limited pleasure. We want unlimited pleasure, unending pleasure that's always increasing, and we want to share it with others. And specifically, we want to share it with the most lovable person, our heart of hearts, and we want everybody who we love to love him as much as we love him. So why is that we have these inherent feelings? We have these needs. Could it be that this is our essence, and this is what we really are? Wouldn't that be a much more reasonable proposal than to think that everything is void or that everything happened by chance? So therefore, we put forward that according to the Shastras and according to common sense, that if you see a $100 bill floating, somebody owns it. And it's best to find out who owns it instead of just sticking it in your pocket thinking you can enjoy it yourself. So this world belongs to somebody. It didn't come about by accident. So therefore, it behooves us to find out who is the owner and who is the controller and what is the purpose. So, did I miss anything there? Did I think? Anyway, so what is the purpose of the world? Is that we need to find out what the owner and controller is, and the Vedic scriptures, which are Aparujaya, They come down descending because we cannot figure this thing out by ourselves. We have to be taught by higher authorities, just like Lord Ramananda. Oh, sorry. I'm missing people trying to call in. Oh well. Sorry, Cruz. I'm trying to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. That we are part and parcel of that supreme, just like the hand is part and parcel of the body. If the hand tries to enjoy by itself, it can't, but as soon as it puts food in the stomach, automatically enjoys. So if we're part of him, then if we cooperate with him in enjoyment, then we will enjoy. That's what the spiritual world is all about. However, in the spiritual world, there's only room for one enjoyer. So this world, yes, we agree, it's meant for enjoyment, but not enjoyment as the karmis, the materialists, the atheists want to enjoy, neither enjoy by just stopping our suffering by annihilating ourselves, but it's meant to enjoy through reformation. There's 8,400,000 species of life of different gradations, some higher, some lower, some the same. There's name, forms, qualities. Some are so vast in duration of life that can be considered eternal, and some are so transient that last for but a moment. All of this is meant for our enjoyment. But after we've gone through unlimited suffering, we come to the point that we understand that this is not our home. We cannot be satisfied with it because it has dukhalayam ashashtam. It's full of suffering, limited by time and space. We need to go back to the eternal spiritual world. There's the last slide. I should put that up before. And go back home, back to Godhead, and instead of trying to enjoy this perverted world, it's like vicarious enjoyment. Matter is dead. We're trying to enjoy through matter. Once we understand that we cannot enjoy vicariously through the dead matter, we have to enjoy through spirit, through our spiritual senses, then we're ready to go back home, back to Godhead, to start on the path. Okay, so I hope that was all right. I used up all the time, and I went over time. It's about 5 minutes after 7. I'm going to unmute everybody. Then, and if anybody has anything they want to bring up, then please go ahead, although we are past time. So sorry about that. I was just kind of babbling on. Took a while. That's why I needed the slides, because they're kind of like hard for me to present just by voice, but I thought the slides would help. Anyway, there you go. Anyone have anything they wanted to add?
Ramananda, it was a great class. I was literally glued to my chair. Usually I do a few things during class, like feed the birds, feed the fish, and listen. I couldn't leave my chair. My eyes were glued to the screen, and it was a wonderful class. I have a hard time coming up with a question. I'll say I'm really glad you finally came to that last slide, because I was all spaced out and bordered on depressed. Everything you were showing, this material world and robots and illusions and probabilities and so on. And anyway, I feel all relaxed now that you came to this last slide where.
I'm sorry, I should have put that up earlier.
No, it's good. You saved it till the end. It was like kind of like a movie at the end, like it's all better at the end or something. Ends with a happy ending. But boy, you took us on a real roller coaster there. That was a fantastic class.
Oh,
by the way, I never knew, and I guess I probably should have. I never knew that the yuga cycles, the timing. I made a screenshot of that so I can look at it later. I didn't know that that the Dvapara Yuga was twice what Kali Yuga is, and then Treta Yuga was 3 times, and then the Satya Yuga, I guess, was 4 times. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's just an easy way to remember. Just remember 432,000, and then you multiply it by 2, and then, you add 2, or you double it, and then you triple it, and then you multiply by 4.
Boy, and then when you started, so that I could kind of wrap my brain around that one. But then when you started going upwards on the chart, it was like, and it was like my brain couldn't wrap itself around the lengths of lives and the day of Lord Brahma. I guess what was just running through my mind is, oh my God, our life is so short compared to the denizens of the heavenly planets and so on. And boy, how and for most of us listening to this class, we're on the final stretch of our life. I mean, we just got moments left, and we can obtain perfection in that last little bit of time. We got to be crazy to waste a second. And I was just having nice realizations with that chart, even though I couldn't really grasp it as you were going up. It's kind of beyond my mental capacity, but at least it gave me some realization of how fortunate, how short our little tiny life is here in Kali Yuga, and boy, it makes me now even more than ever not want to waste a second, and then get to this last picture here and be back with Krishna being embraced at the end of this life. Anyway, that's a fantastic class. I literally couldn't keep my eyes off the screen for a moment, and I never got up once.
Oh, well, thank you. You're very generous. Were the slides helpful, guys?
Really helpful. I mean, the slides were with this particular class, it was essential. They were essential as part of it, and that's the way you designed it. You couldn't have done what you did without the slides. That was just the nature of your presentation. They were fantastic.
All right, thank you.
And the snake and I never saw that of the snake and the rope. That is eternally indwelled in my brain. I never remember seeing that before. That's a laid line, which I'm so used to as a mariner. There's 3 lines to make laid line, which is real typical, so you can braid it and so on. And so that line and the snake, and that was great. Great class.
Oh, thank you.
I see you put a lot of work into this. It was fantastic.
Okay. We're about 10 minutes after. Does anybody else wanted to add something real quick?
I just wanted to ask Hare Krishna, Ramananda Prabhu. I also was glued to my chair, and I was trying to imagine the slides because I didn't have them, and I was just imagining what was going on. I hope you put the slides up on the website. I've asked this question before, but I've never gotten a fully satisfying answer, so let me just try this. If we're actually the soul and we're misidentifying with the body, why is it that the body, lately I've been suffering from physical pain, and you've been suffering from physical pain. Why is it that, who is suffering? Am I suffering as the soul, or am I suffering as the mind, or who's experiencing the pain?
Just 30-second answer. Again, it's not that the Maya bodies are completely wrong. The impersonals are completely wrong. It is a superimposition. It is an illusion. We're identifying ourselves with our body even though we have nothing to do with it. And the experiments that were being done, they can also do it like with an artificial hand, a mannequin hand. They'll stick the mannequin hand in front of you, and then your other hand is hidden. And then what they'll do is they'll rub simultaneously the hand that's hidden, your real hand, with like a brush or something, with a mannequin's hand. And they'll do that for 15 minutes. Then they'll take a hammer out and they'll go boom on the mannequin's hand. And then people will just freak out because they identified with that mannequin's hand. So you can project your consciousness, superimpose it on something that is not yourself. We have everyday experience of it. It actually happens. So that's what's happening, We're spirit souls. We have nothing to do with matter. We're trying to vicariously enjoy it, and because we try and enjoy it, we have to suffer. So we have to take our consciousness out of matter through transcendental sound. I'm sorry, was there anybody else? Sorry, excuse me?
I really did appreciate that. Now, where did you read about that mannequin hand experiment?
Oh, there's just tons of stuff like that on the internet. Just do a search and it'll come up with it. It's
okay, yeah, that was good.
They can make you
Thank
feel
you.
like your hand is made of marble, you know, by adding sound to it. They'll hit the hand and they hear the sound of marble, and then you'll think that your hand is made of you know, in marble or stone or something. It's amazing what kind of illusions we can be under. So that's why people, when they lose limbs, they actually feel pain in the limbs even though they're gone, because their consciousness is still there. Their subtle body is still there. I'm sorry, was there anyone else? I heard somebody say something, but I...
Oh, yeah, I have a question. So we are identifying with the body falsely, but yet if there's a problem with the body, we can't function. So say your brain is deteriorated, which happens in old age with dementia, and then you can't even function, even though... Now, would you be able to function okay if you were saying, well, this is not me? Would you be able to still, you know, you can't. You only can operate through the body. So how can we separate ourselves from this body that, you know, even if we don't identify with it? How can we still continue on as even if it's a totally dysfunctional body?
We're just reading chapter 22, the 11th canto on Sunday. By the way, Ravinda Swarup is back on the circuit. The last 3 weeks he's been giving fantastic classes on the 11th canto. So Uddhava asked the very same question that you're asking right now. Even though that we're not this body, the soul is so intimately connected with it, it's hard to tell the difference from it. That's at the end of chapter 22. So stay tuned. I don't know. We haven't gone over it yet. I'll be interested to find out, you know, what Uddhava has to say, but that's where it can be found, the exact question.
Okay. The other thing is, when you were talking about time frame, those that attain Brahmaloka, you said that only up to 15 trillion years you can stay there in Brahmaloka, or say somebody is promoted to Brahmaloka, they don't stay to the end of his life?
I may be wrong, but I thought I just read that. If you go back to chapter 2 or to chapter 3, I forget. Anyway, we just read about those that go to Satyaloka, and I believe there it said the duration of life is 15.5 trillion years.
So then they have to also leave.
But, yeah, so nobody's going to live as long as Lord Brahma, unless you're an Ardhamuni. You know, because with an eternal body, a spiritual body. But that's what it said of the yogis. When they see the fire of annihilation, they go up to Satyaloka. From Maharloka, they elevate themselves to Satyaloka, where they have a duration of, you know, so many trillions of years.
All right.
Okay.
What time is the Sunday class with Ravindra Swarup Maharaj? Or
that's at 4:30 a.m. Hawaii time at this time of year for the next 6 months.
Are those classes recorded, Ramanandaji?
Yeah, I record them all, and they're on our website under 11th canto.
Oh, okay. I go back and listen to some.
Yeah, they're really, really good. I look forward to them every week. Okay, Prabhus, we are way over. It's about 7:15 right now. Thank you very much, Prabhus, for, you know, listening and, you know, being so generous. Appreciate it. Look forward to Hanuman Prashek's class tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful class.
Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Very enlightened.
Hi, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.